Hey there, it's Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Okay, as you know, I'm getting ready to build my own uh, portable solar generator. It's going to be a 6,000 watt unit with about 15 kilowatt hours of battery storage. So that means that I'm using three server rack batteries, each at 100 pounds apiece. And the inverter weighs probably about 85 pounds from what I understand. So we're talking about this car being somewhere around, by the time I get everything on there, probably 450 pounds. And that got me to thinking that um, we need to do something a little bit better than what I originally was thinking. If you want, Will Powers took and made a 240 volt version of what I want to do. Only he used two batteries and he used a two-wheel dolly, which was a big mistake. And I saw that immediately. And I'd already been thinking about it, and I was already ready to go to a four-wheel cart to build mine. That way you had the four-wheel cart to roll it around. Not ideal, but it would work. The problem is that a four-wheel cart, a utility cart, the ones that I'm looking at that be able to carry that kind of weight, you're talking about a 2 foot wide by 4 foot long cart. So the footprint on that, when it's sitting, stored, or in use, or whatever you're doing with it, it's actually quite large. So I got to thinking about it. What would be great is to be able to have it upright like a two-wheel dolly, but be able to move it around. So if you look at Will Powers on his dolly, his two-wheel dolly, he used a real heavy-duty dolly to mount everything. But he missed what really you need to do. You can make the two-wheel dolly, I believe, to be able to carry that kind of weight. And in my case, we're talking about, let's say, between 400 and 500 pounds somewhere. But the problem is that his wheels are not in the right place in order to carry that load. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I drew two diagrams here. One of them is two-wheel cart style. And you see, if you look at your center of gravity here from the axle, because when you tip this back, all that weight is going to go here, or it's going to go to this end here. This is like the tongue of if I turn this thing completely horizontal, this would be like the tongue of a trailer. And the tongue weight is based on how much of this weight is on that side of the axle here, and how much of that weight is on this side of the axle. Well, that's the problem. Is most dollies have anywhere from probably a 6 or to an 8-inch wheel, and that's the problem you're going to have. Is you're always going to have that weight too far up. That's going to make it harder to bring it back, to tip it back, and it's going to be harder to hold and to maneuver when that weight is off center over the wheel. You center that weight over that wheel so that it's easier to roll, and you're going to find that you can put a lot of weight on there and still be able to move it around. So that's the problem. Is this battery bank here? This battery bank makes it too heavy toward the tongue end of this cart. So in order to solve that, I took a look at, and surprised me when I really did get a look at it, at a log cart. If you know what a log cart is, that's what this shape is here. It's more like a wheelchair. But if you don't, just go look on Amazon for the phrase log cart, and you'll see what I'm talking about. There'll be bunches of examples. So basically, what this does is that if we increase this wheel size so as to get that center of gravity on that axle higher up on the weight, then we're going to be much better off. So I'm going to actually have to build a cart if I want to be able to haul 400 to 500 pounds around on a two-wheel dolly. A regular two-wheel dolly will never work right. You'll always have a real struggle. So, but I think I've got it figured out. This thing, when you stand there, whether you stack them or you stand them up on, whether you stand them up on end or you lay them flat and you stack one on top of the other, put 3 of them together, you're going to have a height of about 18 inches from here to here. So this wheel to the center is what's going to be critical. So how big a wheel can I put on there? Well, I was thinking that, why can't I use a wheelbarrow wheel? In fact, I would use 2 of them because of the weight aspect of it, because those things carry about 600 or 700 pounds of, depending upon how beefy of an axle, they have a capacity of 600 to 700 pounds. So I would have to put 2 on there in order to use this cart, sort of like you would a wheelbarrow. So I would take these 2 wheels and put them on the back behind, and I actually would raise it up above the bottom just about an inch, so that it sets. When you tip it up right, it sets on this area right here. This is the box width, whatever this is. In fact, this box will actually stick out a little further over, and it'll cover that wheel. The wheel will be kind of like, look like it's on the inside underneath. So when I lean it up forward, it's going to be pretty stable sitting upright. But I'll be able to roll it back, and it'll roll onto the wheel, and then you can roll it around. But you got to use a bigger wheel on this and get that center of gravity on the heavy part of the weight, which is this here. And I'm talking about 300 pounds right here is what it would be on my cart. You got to get that over the center of the axle somehow. Otherwise, you're going to have terrible time. So I'm just going to have this panel here, have the wheel inside. They'll probably be about 12 inches apart. So they each be off center from the center on the wheels, about 6 inches. And if the cart is 24 inches wide, then that means that from the center, it's 12 inches all the way out. If I'm coming out 6, that puts my wheels inset about 6 inches from the outside of the cart. So I can actually have a panel out there so you wouldn't see the wheels except from the back side, and it would extend this footprint a little further over. So I hope you understand what I'm talking about. But in all reality, you need to design a cart closer to the design of a log cart than you would from a Dolly. This might work good for a smaller system like 1 battery and a 65-pound inverter or less. That makes that tolerable. But if you're going to put a lot of weight on that thing, and you want to avoid the 4-wheel cart still, because when I put this down flat, that means that this thing is still going to be about 2 foot this way, about 2 foot wide, and it actually can be probably somewhere in the neighborhood. Well, it'll probably end up being just about the same height. I don't think I would worry about too much about the height overall anyway. It's the width, footprint on the floor. How much space does it take when it's sitting there? This you can still put in a closet without any problem and roll it out when you need it if you wanted it to. And you can roll it anywhere and use cords to plug this in directly into the house and backfeed it. Right now, if you have a generator set up, which I have, I can take that same outlet with this cart, and instead of plugging my generator directly into the house and running it, backfeeding it, I can plug this. I will have the output of the inverter plug into that plug-in on the house. And now the battery bank is what can feed the house when I turn the inverter on instead of the generator. And then to recharge it until I get my solar set up to recharge it, I then would take the generator and plug it directly into the input on the generator. So the generator would not ever be running the house anymore. It's either charging the battery or it's off. And the battery is running the house all the time, the whole time. So I think this will be a better setup. It'll be very easy to incorporate it into what I already have without any problem. And I can roll this over to there. Now, I'm also going to set it up to where I can run this cart right here off of this outlet and shut off this whole garage from the house. That's a 30-amp circuit breaker in the house. And I am planning on taking and shutting that off. And I'll probably store the cart over here, which means I'm going to have to move the drill press to a different location. but I'll be able to use it here. And then when to recharge it, once I've been using it, I'll just turn the garage back on and then let it charge up the batteries fully, and then I can go back to turn it back off. So I can use the grid power to charge the batteries, so I can kind of play with this thing. Eventually, I'll just move the generator over to here. That can sit here all the time, and if I have to run the house, I should be able to then take and turn that breaker on to the garage and backfeed that battery system all the way to the house in the same way that I now do it from that generator plug-in. And then I just have to move my generator over here so that I can charge it up while it's plugged in and backfeeding the house from inside the garage instead of on my back deck. So right now, the only plug-in I have that I can use for all of this is the one that I use for the generator, and that is an outside plug-in. So I just run a cord from the generator, which is in the little shed 20 feet away from that plug-in, and I run the cord over and I plug it in. So I just have to get that battery bank and roll it over close enough to plug it in there, and probably under my awning so that I can use this thing no matter what the weather is. And if I enclose it strategically, I'll be able to make it pretty much weatherproof so that it can sit outside. As far as the charging the batteries and everything staying warm, we may be able to do that too. Put some kind of small heater in there that I can turn on if it looks like it's going to be cold outside. So I think you'll be able to use this from outside, plug it into an outside outlet. I'll be able to run it from plugging it in right here in the garage and backfeeding from here if I want. So I'll be pretty versatile where I can use it, and probably have some kind of heater on this system so that the batteries can be protected from the cold in case it is sitting outside running the system. I'll just have to have some kind of heater system on it too. Anyway, that's kind of my thought. That way, at least when the power goes out, I can still function. Eventually, I'll do some solar, in which case I may have to find a permanent mount to put that somewhere. Plus, I may add battery power to it more. If I do, I'll have to rebuild the cart or take it off the cart completely and mount it on the wall in the house. So where it's going from here, I don't know, but this little cart will give me a lot of good practice of being able to hook up things and to run different things from that, and yet I can take the cart and move it somewhere else. So I think that a mobile unit would really be nice. And I have to tell you, if you look at the what this compares to is the whole home backup system that Blue Eddy and Mango and EcoFlow, they all have, where they take two of their units and put a 240 hub and plug them in. If I had that kind of system, and I thought about buying that instead of making my own, but even if I bought that system, you really should buy a cart to put all that stuff on so that it gives you a little bit more versatile rather than to carry all those silly pieces around. Because there are going to be also a lot of attachments that you're going to want for this thing. You're going to want a couple of extra power cords, maybe a couple of splitters and adapters to go on to be able to plug in a couple of different types of outlets and that sort of thing. So I want to make it pretty universal to be able to use it just about in any kind of environment, and either freestanding or plugging into a some building and backfeed it if you have to. So I think these carts would be very handy once we get a good one designed and built. I think you'll find a lot of people out there would probably say, that's not a bad way of doing it. I wouldn't mind having a portable power station. So, because that would be quite a power station too. That'd be almost like running up to grid power everywhere you go and just take it with you. Anyway, I am rambling. I think that I wanted to explain to you about this weight thing though, because it's really important that if you're going to have 300 pounds and you want to use a two-wheel dolly instead of a four-wheel cart, because when you start getting above a couple hundred pounds, that guy is not going to do it for you. You have to get that weight redistributed so that it's over that axle, so that when you tip it and move it, it's going to be 10 times easier than off of a two-wheel dolly. So if you're going to make your own, even if you're making this, I think that rather than using the two-wheel dolly, if you're going to build your own, I would still go with some more design like this. There's lots of different size wheels and different weight capacities, so you can make this whole thing whatever size you want. And once I have it in my mind how I'm going to build this now, and once I get this built, I'll show it to you so you can see, so you can compare it to how you build yours. Because whatever you put in it, it's going to be, that's going to dictate the size of your unit of whatever you want. Right now, I'm building a 3 battery setup with 1 inverter, simple cut and dry, a nice little dolly. So I think I can make it pretty compact still. Less than a 2 foot by 2 foot footprint when it's sitting there. So that won't be bad to have something that size instead of that big monster wagon that I would have to have otherwise. So anyway, it's just a food for thought. It's really funny because now that I'm really getting into this, I thought this was going to be easy and simple and I didn't have to think about much. But it's like this cart. Just so much time has gone into my thinking about this and about a 4-wheel. Because I was going to go to that 4-wheel, and I have to tell you, I just hated the thought of having to grab that wagon handle and move that thing around by dragging it around with the handle. It's just not a good way to maneuver it, especially in tight places. A 2-wheel cart is really what you want so that you can get into a little bit tighter areas sometimes when you have to. So, anyway, stay tuned. Not only do I have to do that, but I've also realized I'm going to have to put an overhead hoist in my shop. And I've never had one in here. But I have to think about it, some kind of crane system. Now, if you know my shop at all, you know that I have my TV hanging from the ceiling on a rail system that goes across the shop from one side to the other. So I can move this TV and turn it any direction. So as I move my shop around, I still can get advantage to see my TV because I don't only use it to watch things, I also use it for instruction and following the instructions in real time. So it's nice to have that TV on that rail. I might be able to put a pulley system on that same rail to use the overhead, but if I do, I think I'm also going to have to make a post to go up against it from the floor to help give it additional support. I don't know if I want to put much weight because that's all, that whole rail system is on one floor joint, on one rafter. Because, in fact, I think this is trusses in here. But still, that's only one because they're running the same direction as the rail system. So the rail is only attached to one truss. For the TV, that's not a problem for the weight. But if I'm going to start pulling up 100 or 200 pounds of weight, I may have to dress that thing and make it just a little bit stronger. So anyway, you might stay tuned. You may see me do something really bizarre with that. There's lots of things around this shop we want to do. And as you can see, we're also going to have to make some improvements as we go along too. So anyway, I wanted to share that cart design and kind of bounce off the idea of having to have that overhead rail system. And I think I may be able to have something go that at least would give me function. And I don't need this big fancy rail system that would take up the whole ceiling for just that and being so heavy duty. I think I can make use of the rail system I have with a couple of floor supports and be able to work with it anywhere I need. Because this is something I'll probably only use this thing. I've never needed one now, so I don't want to build some elaborate system that ends up just sitting there after this. So we're going to do something simple for an overhead rail system. I think that'll be very interesting when that goes off. Now, as you know, I am rambling now. I must be about done. If you have any questions about any of this or any thoughts, leave them in the comments. But I think this is something very interesting. I've never seen anybody out there make it the right way, because I think this is so much better than that. So anyway, so much about rambling. I want to thank you for coming by. If you learned something here, you like this video, hit that like button. Lets me know I'm doing something right. Most importantly, please come back again, because I'm nowhere near done. Thanks. And of course, we'll see you guys again soon.